The notification sound from Lindsay's phone cut through our Sunday morning silence like a blade. She was in the shower, and I was making coffee when I saw it light up on the kitchen counter. Will's name, my boss. At 7:23 a.m. on a weekend. I've been married to Lindsay for 4 years. We met at a company party when she was still working in HR at my firm. She's beautiful, ambitious, and until that moment, I thought she was mine. I'm Michael, 32, marketing director at Brennan & Associates. I've worked my way up from junior analyst to running campaigns for Fortune 500 clients. 60-hour weeks, missed dinners, sacrificed weekends, all for the career that was supposed to secure our future together. Will Henderson has been my supervisor for 2 years. He's the kind of man who wears expensive suits and talks about synergy unironically. 45, divorced, drives a Tesla, and has an office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I respected him, trusted him. Hell, I'd even invited him to our house for dinner parties. He'd sat at my table, eaten my food, complimented Lindsay's cooking while looking at her in ways I now realized weren't entirely professional. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Will. Then another. I didn't touch her phone. I didn't need to. The preview text was enough. I can't stop thinking about last night. When can we... My coffee mug slipped from my hand. The ceramic shattered against the tile floor, but I barely heard it. 4 years of marriage. 2 years of working under Will. How long had this been happening? How many late nights at the office were actually something else? How many times had I thanked him for keeping Lindsay company during company events while I networked with clients? The shower was still running. Steam crept under the bathroom door like fog rolling in before a storm. I had maybe 3 minutes before she came out, wrapped in her towel, smiling at me, the way she had every morning for 4 years, the way she probably smiled at him. I cleaned up the broken mug with mechanical precision. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I expected rage, tears, the kind of emotional explosion you see in movies. Instead, I felt cold, calculating, like someone had flipped a switch in my brain from husband to strategist. The promotion review was in 2 weeks. Senior marketing director, a position that would put me on equal footing with Will, maybe even above him depending on how the restructuring played out. I'd been preparing for months, building my case, documenting every successful campaign, every client relationship I'd cultivated. The Morrison account alone had brought in $2.3 million in revenue. The Peterson campaign had exceeded projections by 40%. Will had been my biggest supporter, or so I thought. Now I wondered if his encouragement was guilt, or worse, pity. Lindsay emerged from the bathroom in her white terry cloth robe, hair wrapped in a towel. She looked radiant, glowing. I used to think that glow was for me. Now I wondered if it was the afterglow of betrayal. "You're up early," she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips felt like ice against my skin. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Big week ahead." She grabbed her phone from the counter without looking at it, but I saw her thumb swipe across the screen. Deleting messages. The motion was practiced, automatic. This wasn't new. This wasn't a recent development. This was routine. "I'm having lunch with Sarah today," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Might be late." Sarah, her college roommate who lived in Portland, who I'd spoken to on the phone just last week when she called looking for Lindsay, who definitely wasn't in town, who probably hadn't been in town for any of these mysterious lunch dates. "That's nice," I said. "Tell her I said hello." Lindsay nodded and headed upstairs to get dressed. I watched her go, noting the way she clutched her phone, the slight tension in her shoulders. She was lying, and she knew I might be catching on, but she didn't know that I already had. I spent the rest of Sunday planning, not confronting, not crying, planning. Because Will Henderson was about to learn that promoting me was the biggest mistake of his career, and Lindsay was about to discover that she'd underestimated the man she'd married. The irony wasn't lost on me. They thought they were playing me, but they'd actually handed me the perfect weapon. Will's recommendation for my promotion would now become evidence of his compromised judgment. Every positive review he'd given me could be questioned. Every decision he'd made regarding my career was now legally suspect. I opened my laptop and began what would become the most important presentation of my life. Not the one for the promotion review, the one that would destroy them both. If you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure to subscribe. You won't believe what happens next. Monday morning arrived, like any other day, except everything had changed. I sat across from Lindsay at breakfast, watching her butter her toast with the same delicate precision she'd used for 4 years. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The irony wasn't lost on me. "You seem quiet," she said, glancing up from her phone. Always the phone now. I wondered how many messages from Will she was hiding behind that casual morning scroll through social media. "Just thinking about the Peterson account," I lied smoothly. "Big presentation this week?" She nodded, but her attention was already back on her screen. Her thumb moved in small, quick swipes. Deleting. Always deleting. I counted the swipes. 7 messages deleted in 30 seconds. That was a lot of conversation to erase. At the office, I observed Will with new eyes. He greeted me the same way he always did. Firm handshake, that practiced smile, asking about my weekend. But now I noticed things I'd missed before. The way his eyes didn't quite meet mine when he asked about Lindsay. The slight pause before he said her name, like he was tasting something forbidden. The way he adjusted his tie when he mentioned her, a nervous tell I'd never caught before. "How's the promotion prep coming along?" he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "The review board meets Friday." "Confident," I replied. "I've documented everything. Every campaign, every client relationship, every strategic decision that's driven revenue this quarter." Something flickered across his face. Concern? Guilt? Oh, that's thorough of you. "I believe in being prepared." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "I've learned that in business and in life, people aren't always who they seem to be." Will shifted uncomfortably. "Right. Well, I'm sure you'll do great." After he left, I opened my laptop and began what I now think of as my real work. I'd always been good with data, with patterns, with seeing connections others missed. It's what made me valuable to the company. Now I was turning those skills toward my personal life. I started with phone records. Our family plan made it easy to access call logs. The pattern emerged quickly. Calls to Will's number that corresponded perfectly with her late nights at the gym and dinners with Sarah. Calls that lasted 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes. You don't spend 40 minutes talking to your husband's boss about work, not at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The gym alibi was particularly insulting. I'd encouraged her fitness routine, even bought her expensive workout clothes and a premium membership. Turns out she was getting her cardio elsewhere. Then I checked our credit card statements. Charges at restaurants I'd never been to, on nights when she claimed to be home with a headache. A hotel charge from 3 weeks ago, the Marriott downtown. The same night she said she was at her sister's place helping with the kids. I called her sister that afternoon. Casual conversation about family. The kids had been fine that night, no emergency, no help needed. Each piece of evidence felt like a small victory and a devastating loss simultaneously. I was building a case, but I was also watching my marriage dissolve in spreadsheet cells and transaction records. The real breakthrough came Wednesday evening. Lindsay was in the shower again. She'd been showering a lot lately, I noticed, sometimes twice a day, washing away guilt maybe, or preparing for someone else. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen table, logged into her personal email. The message preview was from Will. "Meeting room C is empty after 6 p.m. tomorrow. Can't wait to." I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to. But I did something else. I opened her browser history, hotel websites, lingerie stores I'd never heard of, restaurant reservations at places we'd never been together. And then, buried in the search history from 2 weeks ago, how to tell if your husband suspects an affair. She knew I might be catching on, and she was researching how to hide it better. The clinical nature of it, the premeditation, hit me harder than the affair itself. This wasn't a moment of weakness or passion. This was calculated deception with research and planning. I scrolled further. Signs your spouse is investigating you. How to delete phone records permanently. Legal consequences of adultery and divorce. She was preparing for war, and she didn't even know I'd already started fighting. I closed the laptop and sat in the kitchen listening to the water run upstairs. My phone buzzed with a text from Will. "Great work on the Morrison proposal. Looking forward to our meeting tomorrow." Our meeting. The one where he'd probably tell me about the promotion while knowing he was sleeping with my wife. The one where he'd shake my hand and congratulate me while betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. That's when the rage finally came. Not the explosive kind I'd expected, but something colder, more useful. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to HR. Not about the affair. Not yet. About something else entirely. Something that would change everything. I'd remembered something from last month's compliance training. Something about conflicts of interest and disclosure requirements. Something Will had forgotten about when he started sleeping with the wife of his direct report. Company policy was crystal clear. Any personal relationship that could influence professional decisions must be disclosed immediately. Will had been evaluating my performance, recommending my promotion, and making decisions about my career while compromising his objectivity. Every positive review he'd given me was now legally questionable. Every recommendation was tainted. The company's liability exposure was enormous. I attached documentation of Will's failure to disclose, cited specific policy violations, and requested an immediate investigation before any personnel decisions were finalized. I wasn't reporting an affair. I was reporting a compliance violation that happened to involve an affair. I hit send and closed the laptop. Tomorrow's meeting was going to be very different than Will expected. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm handling this the right way. because what I did next changed everything. Thursday arrived with the precision of a surgical strike. I dressed in my best suit, the charcoal gray Armani that Lindsay had bought me for my birthday. She'd said it made me look powerful. Today, she was right. The email I'd sent to HR the night before was simple, clinical, and devastating. I'd reported a potential conflict of interest that required immediate investigation before any personnel decisions could be finalized. I'd attached documentation of Will's failure to disclose his relationship with a spouse of a direct report, a clear violation of company policy that I'd memorized during our compliance training. I didn't mention the affair directly. I didn't need to. HR would connect the dots, and when they did, they'd realize that Will had been compromised for months. Every decision he'd made regarding my career, every recommendation, every evaluation, all of it was now legally questionable. At 8:47 a.m., my phone rang. Janet Morrison from HR. Her voice was tense, professional. "Michael, we need to discuss your report immediately. Can you come to conference room A?" "Of course," I said, my voice steady as granite. Will was already there when I arrived, sitting across from Janet and two other HR executives I recognized, but had never worked with directly. His face was pale, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, realizing his world was about to collapse. "Michael," Janet began, "thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. We've conducted a preliminary review, and we need to clarify some details." I sat down across from Will, meeting his eyes for the first time since I'd discovered the truth. He looked away first. "The relationship you've reported," Janet continued, "how long have you been aware of it?" "I became aware of concerning communications 3 days ago," I replied. I felt it was my ethical obligation to report potential policy violations before any career decisions were made that could be legally challenged later. Will's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what I was doing. I was protecting the company and myself while systematically destroying him. "Will?" Janet turned to him. "You failed to disclose this relationship as required by company policy. This puts the firm in a difficult position, especially given the upcoming promotion review." "It's not what it looks like," Will said, his voice cracking slightly. "Michael, surely we can discuss this privately." I leaned forward, my voice calm and professional. "I'm not sure what there is to discuss, Will. Company policy is clear about disclosure requirements. I'm simply ensuring that all personnel decisions are made with full transparency." The beauty of it was that I wasn't lying. I wasn't being emotional. I was being exactly what the company valued most, a strategic thinker who protected their interests. Will, meanwhile, looked like exactly what he was, a man who'd let personal desires compromise his professional judgment. "Furthermore," I continued, pulling out a folder I'd prepared, "I've documented several instances where this undisclosed relationship may have influenced professional decisions. The Morrison account assignment, my performance reviews, project allocations, all potentially compromised by this conflict of interest." Janet's expression hardened as she reviewed the documents. "This is quite serious, Will. The legal implications alone?" "We'll need to postpone the promotion review pending a full investigation," she announced. "Will, you're suspended with pay effective immediately. Michael, given the circumstances, you'll report directly to Regional Director Sarah Chen until this matter is resolved." Will's face went white. Sarah Chen was 2 levels above him in the corporate hierarchy. I'd just been elevated past him in a single meeting. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out my phone. "I believe transparency requires full disclosure." I placed a printed email on the table, the one Will had sent to Lindsay about meeting room C. I'd printed it from Lindsay's laptop the night before. This was sent from Will's company email to my wife's personal account. I believe it demonstrates that company resources were being used to facilitate this relationship. Janet's expression hardened further. Using company email for personal affairs was a fireable offense. Will knew it. I knew it. Everyone in that room knew it. We'll need your company devices and access cards," Janet said. "Security will escort you out." As Will stood to leave, he looked at me one last time. There was something like respect in his eyes, mixed with the devastation. He'd underestimated me completely, and now he was paying the price. "Michael," he said quietly, "I hope you know what you're doing." "I always know what I'm doing, Will. That's why I'm still here and you're not." After he left, Janet turned to me. "The promotion review will proceed as scheduled, with Sarah Chen conducting the evaluation. Given your handling of this situation, I suspect the outcome will be favorable." "I appreciate the company's commitment to ethical standards," I replied. "It's what makes this a place worth building a career." I walked back to my office, Will's former office, actually, since I'd been moved up immediately, and sat behind the larger desk. Through the window, I could see Will in the parking lot, carrying a box of his personal items to his car. Security was escorting him, standard procedure for terminated employees. My phone buzzed. A text from Lindsay. "Having lunch with Sarah again today. Might be late." I smiled for the first time in days. She had no idea that Will was unemployed, disgraced, and probably sitting in his car right now trying to figure out how to tell her that their affair had just cost him everything. But she was about to find out. Because tomorrow was Friday, and Friday was when I'd be officially promoted to senior marketing director. And I'd already decided exactly how I wanted to announce the news. The afternoon brought a parade of colleagues congratulating me on my temporary elevation. Word traveled fast in corporate environments. By 5 p.m., everyone knew that Will was gone and I was moving up. Some seemed genuinely happy for me. Others looked nervous, probably wondering what I knew about their own indiscretions. Sarah Chen called at 5:30. Michael, I've reviewed your file and the circumstances of your promotion. Impressive work on multiple levels. I look forward to working with someone who understands the importance of corporate integrity. Thank you, Sarah. I believe in doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. That's exactly the kind of leadership we need. Your promotion is effective immediately, by the way. No need to wait for Friday's formalities. I hung up and looked around Will's former office. My office now. The view was spectacular, the desk was larger, and the salary increase would be substantial. But more than that, I'd proven something to myself. I was capable of strategic thinking under the worst possible circumstances. I was capable of turning betrayal into opportunity. My phone rang. Will's number. Hello, Will. Michael, I need to explain. No, you don't. You need to figure out how to tell your wife and my wife that your affair just cost you your career. That's what you need to do. Please, just listen. I did listen, Will. I listened to your messages on my wife's phone. I listened to your lies about working late. I listened to your recommendations for my promotion while you were sleeping with my wife. I'm done listening. I hung up and blocked his number. Comment below if you think Lindsay deserves what's coming next. Because tomorrow, everything comes full circle. Friday evening. The promotion announcement had been made official at 4 p.m. Senior Marketing Director, effective immediately. Sarah Chen had called it a well-deserved recognition of exceptional professional judgment and leadership potential. The irony was perfect. I drove home in Will's old parking spot, the one reserved for senior management, and found Lindsay in the kitchen preparing dinner. She was actually humming, as she chopped vegetables. She looked radiant, probably thinking about her afternoon with Will. She had no idea he'd spent the day updating his LinkedIn profile and explaining to his wife why he'd been fired. You're home early, she said, not looking up from the cutting board. Special day, I replied, loosening my tie. I have news. She glanced up then, and I saw something flicker across her face. Concern? Guilt? It was hard to tell anymore. I got the promotion, I said simply. Her knife stopped mid-chop. The promotion, but I thought, didn't Will say the review was next week? Interesting. So they had discussed my career, probably laughed about it over wine and hotel room service. Plans changed, I said, walking to the refrigerator and pulling out a bottle of champagne. The Dom Perignon we'd been saving for a special occasion. Will won't be involved in personnel decisions anymore. I watched her face carefully as I said it. The color drained from her cheeks like water from a broken glass. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Will Henderson was terminated yesterday for policy violations, conflict of interest issues. I popped the champagne cork with a satisfying sound. Apparently, he'd been having an inappropriate relationship with someone connected to the company, failed to disclose it properly. Lindsay's knife clattered to the counter. She gripped the edge of the granite surface, her knuckles white. I don't understand, she said, but her voice betrayed her. She understood perfectly. It's quite simple, really, I said, pouring 2 glasses of champagne. Company policy requires disclosure of any personal relationships that could create conflicts of interest. Will forgot to mention that he was sleeping with his subordinate's wife. The silence that followed was deafening. Lindsay stared at me, her mouth slightly open as if she was trying to form words that wouldn't come. I handed her a glass of champagne. The beautiful thing about corporate policy, I continued, my voice calm and measured, is that it's designed to protect everyone involved. The company, the employees, even the families. When someone violates that trust, there are consequences. Michael, I can explain... Can you? I interrupted, taking a sip of champagne. And can you explain the hotel charges, the deleted text messages, the lunch dates with Sarah, who lives in Portland? Can you explain why you researched how to hide an affair from your husband? Each question hit her like a physical blow. She sank into one of the kitchen chairs, the champagne glass forgotten in her trembling hands. How long have you known? She whispered. Long enough to document everything, long enough to protect myself legally and professionally, long enough to ensure that when this marriage ends, I won't be the one left with nothing. She looked up at me then, and I saw something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Fear. Not of me, but of the consequences of her choices. The realization that she'd underestimated the man she'd married. I never meant for this to happen, she said, tears starting to fall. But it did happen, I replied. And now Will is unemployed, his reputation is destroyed, and his wife knows everything. Because HR had to conduct a full investigation, which meant contacting all parties involved. Lindsay's face went white. You told his wife? I didn't have to. Company policy did that for me. Amazing how these things work when you follow proper procedures. I walked to the window and looked out at our neighborhood. The same houses, the same trees, the same sidewalks where Lindsay and I used to take evening walks. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. You see, Lindsay, when HR investigates a conflict of interest involving an affair, they have to verify all the facts. That means interviewing everyone involved. Will's wife, Margaret, was quite surprised to learn about your relationship. Apparently, Will had been telling her he was working late on the Morrison account. Lindsay's tears were falling freely now. Oh, Michael, please. Please what? Please forgive you. Please pretend this never happened. Please continue being the fool who works 60-hour weeks while his wife sleeps with his boss. I set down my champagne glass and pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. Will called me 17 times today. 17. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to beg me not to destroy his marriage the way he destroyed mine. What did you tell him? I told him that some actions have consequences that can't be undone. I told him that he should have thought about his wife before he started sleeping with mine. I told him that integrity isn't just a corporate buzzword, it's a way of life. I walked to the hallway closet and pulled out a suitcase I'd packed that morning. I'll be staying at the Marriott downtown tonight, I said. The same one you and Will used 3 weeks ago. I've already spoken to my attorney. You'll be hearing from him Monday. She stood up suddenly, desperation in her voice. Michael, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can work through what exactly? The lying? The betrayal? The fact that you researched how to hide your affair more effectively? The fact that you used our credit cards to pay for hotel rooms where you slept with my boss? I picked up my overnight bag and walked toward the door. You know what the worst part is, Lindsay? It's not even the affair. It's the calculation behind it. The planning, the research, the way you looked me in the eye every morning and lied. That's not a mistake. That's a choice you made every single day for months. She followed me to the door, tears streaming down her face. Please don't leave like this. Please don't end our marriage over this. I turned to face her one last time. I'm not ending our marriage, Lindsay. You ended it the moment you decided that Will Henderson was worth more to you than the man who loved you unconditionally for 4 years. I made a mistake. No, I said, my voice cold and final. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. What you did was a series of calculated decisions to betray the person who trusted you most in the world. I opened the door and stepped into the evening air. Oh, and Lindsay, I said, my hand on the doorknob. Will called me this afternoon. He wanted to apologize, to explain, but I told him the same thing I'm telling you now. She looked up at me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. They deserve consequences. I walked out into the evening air, got into my car, and drove away from the house where I thought I'd build my future. In the rearview mirror, I could see Lindsay silhouetted in the kitchen window, still standing in the doorway where I'd left her. The Marriott was exactly as I remembered it from the credit card statements. Elegant, expensive, and now mine to enjoy without the weight of deception. I checked into the penthouse suite. The promotion came with a significant salary increase, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen. Congratulations again on the promotion. Looking forward to working with you Monday. I smiled and typed back, Thank you. I'm looking forward to the fresh start. Another text came in, this one from an unknown number. This is Margaret Henderson. I wanted to thank you for your courage in reporting what happened. I know this couldn't have been easy for you. Will's wife. I typed back. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. No one deserves to be betrayed by the person they trust most. My attorney says I have grounds for a very favorable divorce settlement. Apparently, adultery still matters in some contexts. I stared at that message for a long moment. Will hadn't just lost his job. He was about to lose everything. His career, his reputation, his marriage, probably half his assets. All because he couldn't keep his hands off another man's wife. Because that's exactly what this was. Not an ending, but a beginning. I'd learned something valuable about myself over the past week. I was capable of playing a longer game than I'd ever imagined. I was capable of strategic thinking under pressure. I was capable of protecting what mattered most, my career, my reputation, my future. And I was capable of ensuring that betrayal came with a price that neither Will nor Lindsay would ever forget. The city stretched out below me, full of possibilities. New clients to win, new campaigns to create, new relationships to build, this time with people who understood the value of loyalty and integrity. My phone rang one last time. Lindsay's number. I let it go to voicemail, then deleted the message without listening to it. Whatever she had to say, it was too late. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Some people say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is best served with perfect timing, flawless execution, and the kind of precision that leaves no room for doubt about who was really in control all along. If this story taught you something about loyalty, consequences, or the power of strategic thinking, hit that like button. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply being better at the game than the people who tried to play you